The prison was dark, and the girl sat alone on the cold floor. Her arms chained to the wall, her body weak, her breath shallow. And her eyes filled with emptiness. She had been here for days, maybe weeks. She had lost count. The guards never spoke to her. They only brought food once in a while, and sometimes they did not bring anything at all. She had learned to stay quiet, to listen to the sound of dripping water, to the echo of footsteps far away, and to the heavy silence that pressed on her chest like a weight. She was young, but her people had already judged her. They said she broke the law. They said she was useless. They said her death would cleanse their shame. She did not understand what she had done wrong. All she knew was that when the bell rang, it meant another prisoner was taken to the execution chamber, and soon it would be her turn. Her hands trembled as she pulled weakly against the iron chains. But they did not move. They were old, strong, and cruel. Her wrists were raw and red. The air smelled of rust, sweat, and fear. She had cried the first few nights, but no one came. She had shouted until her throat hurt, but the walls did not answer. She had begged, but the guards only laughed. Now she sat in silence, her head resting on the stone wall, her eyes staring into the darkness. She waited for the end. She imagined what death would be like. Would it be quick, or would it be slow? Would it hurt, or would it feel like falling asleep? She had no family left to cry for her, no friends to fight for her. She was already forgotten. The guards outside whispered sometimes. She could hear their voices through the cracks in the wall. They said no one had ever escaped from this place. They said even if someone tried, the rules of the galaxy itself would crush them. The rules were older than memory, rules that no one dared to break. To try was madness. To hope was foolish. The girl pressed her knees to her chest and closed her eyes. Maybe if she slept, she would not hear the bell. Maybe when she opened her eyes again, it would all be over. Her heart was heavy, but her body was too weak to cry anymore. Then the sound came, not the bell, not the guard, but something else, a groaning noise. The heavy doors at the far end of the prison slowly opening. She froze, her eyes wide, her body stiff. It was not the time for execution, not yet. The guards always rang the bell before they came, but now there was only silence. The footsteps that followed were different, firm, steady, not like the usual dragging boots of the alien guards. She felt her heart pound. Fear rushed through her body. Who could it be? Was it another cruel game? Was it her time after all? The shadow appeared first, tall and strong. Moving closer and closer, she pressed herself against the wall, her chains rattling as she tried to make herself small. Then she saw him clearly, and her breath caught in her throat. It was not one of her people. It was not a guard. It was not an executioner. It was a human. She had heard of them, stories whispered in the markets before she was taken away. Humans were strange, unpredictable, dangerous, and yet sometimes merciful. But why would a human be here, in this forbidden place? He stood at the bars of her cell, his eyes sharp and full of something she did not recognize, not hate, not cruelty, but determination. He looked at her like he had been searching for her, like he had come for no one else but her. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Why? Why are you here?" The words felt strange, her voice weak from silence. The human did not answer at once. He reached into his cloak, pulling out tools she had never seen before. With quick, skilled hands, he began working on the lock. His every movement was certain, like he had done this many times before. The sound of scraping metal filled the cell. Her eyes widened as she realized what he was doing. You cannot," she stammered, her voice rising in fear. "If they catch you, they will kill you too." The man glanced at her, and a small smile touched his face. It was not the smile of someone careless. It was the smile of someone who had already made his choice. "Let them try," he said quietly. His voice was calm, steady, like iron. The lock clicked, the door creaked, the girl's heart raced. She could not believe it. Someone was breaking the rules. Someone was reaching for her. She had waited for death, but this man, this human, was pulling her away from it. The chains on her wrists felt suddenly heavier, as if they knew their time was ending. Her breath came fast. She was not ready to believe, not ready to hope. And yet, she could not stop the spark inside her chest that told her something impossible was happening. The footsteps of guards echoed from the far corridor, louder, closer. The human turned his head toward the sound. Then back to her, his eyes locked on hers, and he said in a low voice, "I'm here to take you out." Her mouth went dry. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might break her chest. She could not speak, could not move. All she could do was stare at him. This stranger. This human who had just shattered everything she thought was unbreakable. And in that moment, as the guard's shouts filled the prison, she realized she no longer wanted to die. She wanted to live. Because someone had chosen to fight for her life, someone had chosen her. The girl's heart was still pounding as the human pulled her chains loose. The heavy iron fell against the stone floor with a loud crash. And for the first time in days, her wrists were free. She rubbed them with trembling hands, the skin torn and raw. She could hardly believe it. Freedom had always been a dream, something too far away. Yet here it was, standing before her in the form of this human. Her eyes darted to the door. Fear pressed into her chest. The sound of boots thundered down the corridor. The guards were coming. She looked back at the human. Panic rising. "You cannot do this," she whispered. "They will kill you too." The human's jaw tightened. His face calm, but his eyes burned like fire. "Then let them try," he said, his voice steady, strong. Not the voice of a man who planned to die, but the voice of someone who had already decided to win. He grabbed her arm gently, pulling her up. She staggered on her weak legs, her knees shaking beneath her weight. Days of hunger and fear had drained her strength. She almost collapsed, but his hand steadied her. He looked down at her and nodded. "I will carry you if I must." She stared at him, confused. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this?" No one from her own kind had helped her. No one had cared. Yet here was a stranger risking everything, because rules mean nothing if they demand you let someone die. He replied, his voice carried no hesitation. He was not saving her for reward or glory. He was saving her because he could not do otherwise. The guards turned the corner, their weapons raised, shouts filling the air. The human moved quickly. Pulling her behind him, he pulled out a small device, pressed it to the wall, and with a sharp spark. The corridor filled with smoke. The guards coughed, blinded, firing blindly. The human led her through the haze, moving as if he knew every turn, every corner of this prison. Her breath came fast. She stumbled, but he never let her fall. Each step felt unreal. She had imagined her last walk would be to the execution chamber. Not to freedom, not like this. They raced through the endless stone halls. The sound of alarms blaring around them. The prison itself seemed alive, its walls echoing with warnings. Red lights flashing, the girl's chest tightened with fear. "They will catch us," she whispered, her voice shaking. The human glanced back, his expression unshaken. "Not if we keep moving," he said. His grip on her hand firm, his pace relentless. She wanted to believe him, but the prison was vast, and she knew the guards knew every path. Yet there was something in his eyes, a strength she had never seen before. Something that made her want to take another step, and then another. The sound of metal slamming echoed through the halls. A gate ahead dropped down with a heavy crash, sealing off the corridor. Her heart sank. "It is over," she whispered, her body slumped, her spirit breaking again. "They will kill us here." The human did not stop. He stepped forward, examining the gate, His hands moved quickly. Searching, feeling. He was calm, too calm, as if he had expected this. "No," he said quietly. "It is not over." From beneath his armor, he pulled out a device, small and strange. She had never seen anything like it. He placed it against the gate, pressed a button, and a high-pitched hum filled the air. Sparks burst out. Metal glowed red. She covered. Her ears, her eyes wide. "You cannot break it," she cried. "No one has ever broken these gates." "Then watch," he answered. His voice was steady, almost cold, but in that coldness was fire. The explosion roared. Shaking the walls, pieces of the gate flew across the corridor. The ground trembled. Smoke and dust filled the air. Beyond the wreckage lay the open night. Sky wide, endless, free. The girl stumbled back, eyes wide, her lips trembled. You broke the rules of the galaxy itself." He turned to her, offering his hand. "Then let's keep breaking them." She stared at him, her breath shaking. Her whole life she had been told the rules were unbreakable. The chains could never fall. The gates could never open. Death was certain. Hope was weakness. And yet here stood a human who had just proved them all wrong. But the searchlights swept across the sky. The sound of ships rose in the distance. Her fear returned like a storm. "They are coming," she whispered. "They will hunt us down." The human's hand tightened on hers. His voice calm, almost fierce. "Then let them come." In that moment, with the alarms screaming, the prison burning, and the sky above them open for the first time, she realized that she was no longer waiting for death. She was running toward life. The smoke from the broken gate still hung in the air, stinging her eyes and burning her throat. The girl clung to the human's hand as he pulled her forward, every step heavy with fear. Behind them, the prison rang with alarms. Red lights flashing against the stone walls, shouts echoing like thunder. She could hear the guards shouting orders, the clatter of weapons, and the pounding of boots chasing after them. Her legs were weak, her body trembling from hunger and exhaustion. Each breath felt like fire in her chest. She stumbled, her knees giving way, but before she could fall, the human caught her. His arm strong, steady, he lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her against his chest as he ran. She buried her face against him, her voice breaking. "You should leave me. I will only slow you down." But his answer came without pause. "No one gets left behind." His voice was sharp, full of iron. The corridor stretched on like a nightmare, doors slamming shut behind them. Guards appearing from hidden passages, their weapons fired, bolts of light sparking against the walls. The human twisted, dodging, shielding her with his body. The smell of burning stone filled the air. They reached a stairwell, narrow and steep. The human charged upward, his boots pounding against the stone steps. The girl's head spun as she clung to him. Looking back, she saw shadows racing after them. Weapons raised, she closed her eyes, expecting the pain of a shot at any second, but it never came. The human pulled something from his belt and tossed it down the stairs. A blinding flash filled the stairwell. The guards screamed, blinded, stumbling into one another. The sound of chaos echoed below as the human carried her higher and higher. Her heart raced, but for the first time, she felt something new inside her chest. It was not just fear, it was not just despair. It was something strange, fragile, but a live hope. They burst out into a wide hallway, lit by glowing blue lights. This was no longer the prison cells, but the command level. She could see screens, locked doors, and machines humming with power. Guards shouted into radios, pointing toward them. The human ran faster, weaving through the chaos, knocking aside anyone who came too close. "They will never stop," she whispered. "You cannot fight them all." "I don't have to," he said, his breathing steady despite the weight in his arms. "I just have to get you out." The words burned in her mind. Why her? Why risk everything for someone like her? She had been thrown away by her people, judged unworthy, forgotten. Yet this human carried her as if she was worth the whole galaxy. Ahead, another heavy gate slammed shut with a crash, sealing the exit. Guards filled the corridor behind them, their weapons ready. She felt the human's chest rise and fall against her cheek, calm even now. Her heart sank. "We are trapped," she whispered, but his eyes narrowed. He shifted her gently to her feet. Steadying her against the wall, "Stand," he told her firmly, "even if your legs shake." "Stand," she obeyed, her knees trembling, watching as he pulled something from his pack. It was a weapon, long and sleek, glowing faintly with power. She had never seen its kind before. He aimed it at the gate. The guards shouted, charging toward them. She screamed, "They are coming," but the human did not waver. His finger pulled the trigger, and the weapon roared. A blast of energy struck the gate, metal twisting, sparks flying. The wall shook as the gate tore apart, leaving a jagged opening wide enough to slip through. "Go," he ordered, grabbing her hand again. They ran through the smoke, stumbling onto an open bridge that stretched over a vast chasm inside the prison. Wind howled around them. The ground far below, hidden in darkness. Her stomach twisted as she looked down, but there was no time to hesitate. Guards poured onto the bridge behind them, firing. The human turned his body, shielding her again. Bolts of light searing across his armor, his teeth clenched, but he did not slow down. Her chest tightened, tears burning her eyes. "Why do you do this?" she shouted over the chaos. His answer came like thunder, "Because someone has to." At the far end of the bridge, another gate loomed, stronger than the last. For a moment, her hope wavered. She felt the despair returning. But the human's grip on her hand tightened, unyielding, his voice steady, one step at a time. "We will break every wall they put in front of us." Behind them, the commander's voice roared. "Kill them both." Dozens of guards raised their weapons, the air filling with deadly light. The human pushed her behind him, his eyes locked on the gate ahead. The bridge shook, the air crackled with fire, and the girl realized in that terrifying moment that this was no ordinary escape. This was war against the very rules she had been taught to obey, and the human had already chosen to fight it. The bridge trembled under their feet, the roar of weapons echoing through the hollow prison chasm. The human pulled her forward. Every step heavy with danger. Behind them, guards shouted, their voices sharp with rage. The girl clung to his hand, her legs barely moving, her body weak, but her heart racing. She had thought death was certain, but now she was caught in something even stranger, an escape that felt like a dream. At the far end of the bridge stood a gate larger than all the rest, its surface thick with layers of steel, glowing lines of energy pulsing across it. It was a wall meant to stop armies, not just the fugitives. Her breath caught, despair tightening around her chest. "It is impossible," she whispered. "No one can pass this." The human stopped, his chest rising and falling with calm breaths. His eyes studied the gate, not with fear, but with calculation. He let go of her hand and walked up to the towering wall, pressing his palm against the cold surface. For a long moment, he said nothing, only listening, only thinking. Behind them, the guards grew closer, their boots pounding against the bridge. Their weapons fired, bolts of searing light flying past. The girl covered her ears, flinching as sparks burst against the stone walls. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling. "It is over. You saved me this far, but you cannot break this." The human turned to her, his eyes burning with defiance. "Every lock can be broken," he said. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He reached into his pack, pulling out a cylinder covered in wires and strange lights. She had never seen anything like it. It looked dangerous, unstable, alive with power. He knelt before the gate, attaching the device. His hands moved with speed, his fingers sure. The girl's heart pounded as she watched. Every second louder than the last. The guard shouted again, "Fire!" The air filled with deadly light. The girl screamed, crouching low, but the human stood firm, pulling her behind his body. His armor sparked as shots struck him. Yet he did not falter. He finished his work, his hand hovering over the trigger of the device. "Close your eyes," he said to her. "Calm even now." She obeyed, pressing her face against her arms. A heartbeat later, the world exploded. The roar shook the entire bridge. A wave of heat slammed into her body. The ground trembled. Dust and smoke filled the air. She gasped. The sound of tearing metal echoing like thunder. When she opened her eyes, the impossible had happened. The gate was gone, ripped apart. Its remains glowing red and twisted. Beyond it stretched the open night sky. Stars glittering like a promise of freedom. Her mouth fell open, her voice broken. You shattered it," she could hardly breathe. "You broke what could not be broken." The human extended his hand again, his eyes steady. "Then let's finish what we started." She reached for him. Her hand shaking, her people had told her. Rules were eternal, unbreakable, stronger than life. Yet here was proof that rules could fall. Her chest swelled with something sharp and new, a fire that was not fear-hope. They ran through the shattered gate, the cold night air rushing against their faces. The prison's walls opened into a wide landing platform, ships lined up under. The glow of bright searchlights, soldiers swarmed, their weapons raised. Sirens screaming into the night. The human pulled her toward a sleek prison skimmer, smaller than the others. He smashed the cockpit open with his weapon, sparks flying. "Get in," he ordered. She hesitated, staring at him. "But how do you know how to fly this?" He gave her a small smile. "I've learned a thing or two." They climbed inside, alarms blaring louder now. Soldiers shouted from every corner of the platform, their rifles flashing as they fired. The humans. Hands moved quickly across the controls. The ship roared to life, engines glowing bright. Blasts of energy struck the skimmer's hull as it lifted. The girl cried out, clinging to the seat. The ship lurched, shaking violently, but the human's grip was steady. His voice calm. "Hold on." The skimmer shot upward, the prison shrinking below them. The girl pressed her face to the window, her heart racing. She had never thought she would see the sky again. Never thought she would breathe freedom again. But as the stars spread wide before her, she also saw the danger. Large ships circled above, their lights flashing as they turned toward the fleeing craft. Sirens echoed in the night, loudspeakers booming. "Stop immediately, or be destroyed." The human's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the sky ahead. "They can try," he muttered. The girl turned to him, her voice shaking but filled with wonder. "You broke the rules of the galaxy itself." He did not look at her, but his words were fierce, unshakable. "Then let them make new ones." The ship shot forward into the endless dark, the prison fading behind them. The enemy closing in from all sides, and for the first time in her life, the girl did not wait for death. She waited for the next impossible thing the human would do. The skimmer tore through the night sky, its engines howling as it fought to climb higher. The girl clung to the seat, her nails digging into the metal frame. Each shake of the ship made her heart stop. Behind them, the prison lights blazed like fire, and above them, larger ships moved in, their shadows stretching across the stars. The human's hands gripped the controls, his face calm but his jaw tight. He swerved hard as a bolt of energy streaked past, lighting up the cockpit. The ship rattled from the shockwave. Alarms flashing red, the girl gasped, covering her mouth. "They will shoot us down." "Not if I can help it," he said, his voice steady. He twisted the skimmer to the left, flying low between jagged mountain peaks. The ground rushed past beneath them, black and sharp. The engines screamed as he pushed them to their limits, behind. Then the enemy ships gave chase. Their spotlights cut across the sky. Hunting them, beams of deadly light shot forward, striking the mountains, stone exploding into dust. The girl cried out, flinching as the entire skimmer shook. Sparks burst from the control panel. Filling the cockpit with smoke, her chest tightened. Fear pressing against her ribs, she turned to him. "Why? Why are you still doing this? You could have left me." Her voice cracked, full of disbelief. He glanced at her only briefly, his eyes burning. "Because I will not let them decide who lives and who dies." His voice was fierce, unbreakable. The girl stared at him, her heart pounding. No one had ever spoken for her like that. No one had ever chosen her when it meant danger. She felt something stir in her chest, something she had almost forgotten worth. The mountains opened into a wide valley, but the moment they entered, more ships descended, a fleet waiting like wolves. The girl's hope crumbled. "We are surrounded," she whispered. Her hands shook as she clutched the edge of the seat. The human's eyes narrowed. "Then we break the circle." He pulled the skimmer upward. Diving between the enemy ships, alarms screamed louder. The girl's stomach lurched as they spun past beams of fire. The skimmer rocked as the hull was struck, flames licking across the side. "We are hit!" she cried, terror flooding her voice. "I know," he answered sharply. His hands never left the controls. "Hold on." The smell of burning metal filled the air, smoke choking the cockpit. Sparks rained down as systems failed. The girl coughed, her vision blurry. Her body wanted to give up, but his voice kept her anchored. Calm, commanding, alive, the skimmer dove lower. Barely above the treetops, branches snapping against the hull. Enemy fire rained from above, explosions lighting up the night. The girl buried her face in her hands, whispering, "We cannot escape this." But the human leaned closer to the controls, his eyes sharp, his voice low but unshakable. "We will. Even if it kills me." She turned to look at him, shocked. His face was calm in the chaos. Steady as stone, he was not afraid of dying. He was only afraid of failing her. The realization shook her more than the fire outside. The skimmer buckled, the engine sputtering, warning lights flashing red. With a final cry of metal, the ship lost power. The human's hands flew over the controls, forcing the craft into a glide. "Brace yourself," he commanded. The ground rushed toward them. The girl screamed as the skimmer crashed through the treetops. Metal screamed against stone. Fire erupted across the hull. The world became a blur of light and sound, and then silence. The girl opened her eyes slowly, her body shaking. The skimmer lay broken in a valley, smoke curling into the night sky. She coughed, pain shooting through her chest. Her hands searched for him in the dark. "Are you alive?" she whispered. A groan answered, and she saw him push against the wreckage, his face streaked with blood. His armor dented and smoking, but his eyes still steady, still alive. He reached for her, pulling her from the broken cockpit. His hands gentle, even in his pain. The valley was quiet for only a moment. Then came the sound-distant shouts, the roar of engines. The hunters were coming. The girl's heart sank. "They found us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There is nowhere left to run." The human stood, tall despite his wounds. He held his weapon in one hand, his other steadying her. His voice rang out in the dark, fierce, unshaken. "Then we stand, and we do not fall." She stared at him, her breath caught in her throat. In his eyes, she saw no fear, only defiance, only fire. In that moment, she realized he was not just fighting for her escape. He was fighting to show her that her life was worth something. The night filled with the sound of approaching enemies. The human raised his weapon. Ready. And the girl, though her body shook, stepped closer to his side. For the first time, she wanted to fight too. The valley would soon burn. But together, they were not alone. The wreckage of the skimmer still smoked in the valley. Flames licking at broken wings and shattered metal. The human stood beside it, his weapon raised, his chest heaving from the crash, but his eyes cold and steady. The girl clung to his arm, her legs shaking. She could hear them now, the hunter's shadows moving between the trees. Their voices sharp, their weapons ready. The first figures stepped into the valley. Torches casting light against their armor, they spread out in a wide circle, trapping the human and the girl between the wreckage and the dark cliffs. More followed, dozens, then more, their faces hidden, their weapons pointed forward. The girl's throat tightened. "There are too many," she whispered. "We cannot win this." The human did not lower his weapon. His voice came firm, calm like iron. "If I die here, I die protecting you." The girl's chest ached. Her people had abandoned her, judged her unworthy. But this man, this stranger, would give his life for hers. Tears burned her eyes. But she stood straighter, her hand reached for his, trembling but strong. The hunter shouted commands. "Surrender," one voice bellowed. "The prisoner will be taken, and the human executed." The human's reply was sharp. Unshaken, "No." His voice echoed through the valley. "She is not your prisoner. She is under my protection." The hunters hesitated, murmurs spreading. Through their ranks, they had expected fear. They had expected begging. Instead, they saw a man standing tall, unbroken. His defiance unsettled them. The commander stepped forward, his armor gleaming in the torchlight, his voice cold. "You dare to defy the law of the galaxy, human? Do you think one life is worth shattering our order?" The human's jaw clenched. His voice rose, fierce and clear. "Every life is worth it. Every chain broken is worth it." The girl's heart pounded. The hunter shifted uneasily. Unused to such words, for generations they had obeyed the rules without question. They had never seen someone face them without fear. The commander snarled, raising his weapon. "Then you will both die." The girl stepped forward, her voice trembling but loud enough to echo. "No," she cried. Her eyes glistened as she stood beside the human. "He is my protector. He saved me when all of you cast me aside. If he dies, I will die with him." The circle wavered. Some hunters lowered their weapons, confusion on their faces. They had been taught that she was worthless, abandoned. Yet here she stood, defying them. The commander roared in anger, but the hesitation was clear, his control slipping. The human saw it. His eyes narrowed. His voice strong. "You fear me because I refuse to bow to your rules. But look at her. She has more courage than any of you. She is alive because she chose to stand, not to kneel." The girl's body shook. But she held her head high. For the first time in her life, she felt strength inside her chest, not from power or law, but from the simple truth that someone believed she was worth saving. The hunters murmured again. Some stepped back, others shifted uneasily, their discipline cracked. The commander raised his weapon higher, fury burning in his eyes. "Enough," he roared. "End this." But before he could fire, a horn echoed in the distance. A sound deep and heavy, rolling across the valley. The hunters froze, their eyes widening. The sound meant witnesses elders of their people had come. Drawn by the chaos, figures appeared on the cliffs above, cloaked in shadows. Their voices rang out. "What is this?" one demanded. "Why does a human stand against our law?" The commander bowed his head, his voice sharp. "He has broken into our prison, shattered our gates, and stolen the condemned." The elder's eyes turned to the Girl! She stood trembling but firm. Her voice cracked as she shouted upward. I was condemned for nothing. I was abandoned, but he gave me life when you all gave me death. The elders fell silent. The valley quiet, except for the crackle. A fire from the wreckage, the girl's words hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder. His voice low but clear. If you kill us, then kill us both. But no, this you will never bury the truth that your law is broken, that your chains do not hold forever. The hunters shifted again, their weapons faltering. The commander shouted, do not listen to him. They are traitors. But already, doubt had spread. The circle loosened. The girl could see it in their eyes, fear, confusion, and something else, something dangerous, the first spark of questioning. The dawn broke over the mountains then, the light spilling into the valley, painting the wreckage in gold. The girl looked at the human, her chest tight with awe. He had stood unbroken through fire, chains, and death itself, and now even the rising sun seemed to stand on his side. The hunters lowered their weapons slowly, one by one, and the commander's voice, once strong, now sounded small in the silence. The human squeezed the girl's shoulder, his voice low. This is not the end, but it is the beginning. And for the first time, she believed him. The dawn spread across the valley like fire in the sky, golden light falling over broken stone, smoldering wreckage, and the ring of hunters who now stood silent, their weapons, once raised, now lowered. To their sides, their faces showed not victory, but uncertainty. Doubt carved deep into their eyes. The girl stood in the center beside the human. Her legs still shook, her body still weak, but her spirit felt stronger than ever before. She had been thrown away, left to die, yet here she was, alive. Her voice trembling but rising as she faced the elders above on the cliffs. You abandoned me, she cried. You let me wait for death. You called me worthless. But he gave me life. The words struck like arrows. The valley went quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The elders stared down in silence, their faces unreadable. The hunters shifted uneasily. Their law, their order, suddenly cracked by the truth of her voice. The commander snarled, his pride burning hotter than his fear. Enough, he roared. This human has broken every rule. He shattered our gates. He defied our order. He is an enemy, and she is a traitor. The human stepped forward, his weapon lowered but his eyes blazing. If protecting her makes me an enemy, he said firmly, then I accept it, but your law is not justice. It is chains made to break the innocent. Chains that should never have been forged, the hunters murmured again. Louder this time, some looked to the girl, some to the human. The commander's grip on them faltered with every word spoken. The girl felt her heart pound. She knew she should be afraid. But instead, she felt fire in her chest, a strength she never thought she could carry. She stepped closer to the human, her small hand clutching his arm. Her voice rose, steady now. He risked his life for mine. He gave me worth when you gave me none. I choose him. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The hunters looked at one another, whispers racing like sparks. Her people had always obeyed without question. But now they hesitated. Now they wondered. The commander's fury boiled over. He raised his weapon at the human. Then you both die, he shouted, before the shot could fire. Another voice rang out, sharp and powerful. An elder from above stepped forward, his cloak flowing in the morning wind. Stop, he commanded, his eyes, old and heavy with wisdom, locked on the human. You came into the heart of our prison. You broke our walls. You defied death itself. Why? The human met his gaze without fear, his voice clear, steady. Because no one deserves to be thrown away. Not her, not anyone. I do not care for your rules. I care for what is right. The elder's eyes shifted to the girl. And you, child. Do you still see yourself as condemned? The girl lifted her chin, her voice no longer trembling. No, I see myself alive, 'cause he showed me I was worth saving. Silence hung over the valley, the weight of her words heavier than stone. Then, slowly, one hunter lowered his weapon completely. And then, another and another, until the circle broke. Their loyalty no longer to the commander's rage, but to the truth standing before them. The commander roared, furious, "You fools! You betrayed the law," but his voice was drowned by the sound of his own soldiers stepping back. Refusing to obey, the elders above spoke again. "The law has been followed for too long without question. Perhaps it is not the law that is unbroken, but the chains that bind us." The human stood quietly, his arms steady around the girl. He did not look triumphant, only resolute. His eyes burned not with victory, but with purpose. The commander, seeing his power crumbling, tried to fire anyway. His weapon hummed with deadly light, but before he could act, two hunters stepped forward, seizing his arms, dragging him to his knees. His fury turned to silence, swallowed by the dawn. The girl looked at the human, her chest heavy with relief and awe. "You shattered their chains," she whispered. "Not just mine, but all of them." The human looked down at her, his voice softer now. "No, you did that? When you chose to stand." Her throat tightened, her eyes filling with tears, for so long she had believed she was nothing, and now, because of him, because of his defiance, she had become the spark that changed everything. The valley filled with the rising sun. The broken rules scattered like dust in its light. The human and the girl turned from the wreckage, walking side by side into the new day. No chains, no walls, no silence, only the endless horizon before them. And though the galaxy itself would never forget what had been done here, she knew this truth: the human had given her life, and together they would face whatever came next.